How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys all so much for chiming in for the latest episode of Bleav in Queens. This time, episode 33, a special one. We have a big guest we're going to be getting into shortly here in the show. We're also afterwards going to be deep diving all the latest news and rumors regarding the team in Queens, from Jacob deGrom, Brandon Nimmo, Cody Bellinger. Is he a proper fit as a replacement? We're going to be debating a lot. Latest pitching rumors as well regarding Kodai Senga, Carlos Rodon, Jameson Dion, Justin Verlander, you name it. That's what we're going to be breaking it down. But before we get into it all, Joe, how you doing today, my man? What you got for me?
T, doing great as always, and I've got some Bet Online to talk about. Head over to Bet Online, of course, our lead sponsor here on Bleav in Queens, and use that promo code Bleav. That's BLEAV for your first time, one-time 50% welcome bonus. If you go to Bet Online and use that promo code Bleav, you will get a 50% match on any deposit between $50 and $1,000. Guys, football and college football are in full swing. The NBA, NHL, and college hoops are starting to heat up. And of course, you can already bet on MLB futures over at BetOnline. It's where the games begin.
And now let's let the show begin, because like I said, we have a special guest today. He is a third-round pick in 2021 by the Metropolitans. One of their top pitching prospects, was named Pitcher of the Year in the minor leagues for the Mets, that being none other than Dominic Hamel. Dominic, thank you so much for chiming in.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Rec, what you got for him? Let's start off with you.
Well, first of all, Dom, we don't know each other yet, but again, we spoke for a minute before the show. Very nice to meet you. Scott Leventhal, my former agent from when I played, your current agent, says nothing but amazing things about you, your work ethic, the kind of guy you are, and knowing Scott and knowing just how much he loves his guys. I know, and I can already tell you're a great dude, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you continue to put in all the hard work that comes in the off season, and eventually getting that payday of not necessarily the money, but being in the big leagues, that payoff of being in the big leagues, having your shot. Just keep at it, keep working hard. Really excited to see that. But obviously, got you on the show right now. And Mets fans, I got to tell you, this guy is going to be something special. All the things I'm hearing, everything that I'm taking in about this guy, he's got the work ethic, he's got the stuff, and he's ready to kind of take this organization and hopefully Major League Baseball by storm at some point. So, Dom, good to have you on, and I'll leave it over to my guys right now to start off the line of questioning, because that's not really as much my thing.
Intro guy.
Rick, you're still used to being in Dominic's shoes, aren't you?
I mean, it's a little bit weird being on this side. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it's, you interview a player and it's like, wait a minute. I was like, that was me. And now I'm on this side. Yeah. All right, whatever. That's cool.
Tyler, why don't you start it off, man? I know you've been super excited about this for the past few days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dominic, it was a pleasure. I got a chance to watch you multiple times this past year in the minor leagues, to see you win the award for Pitcher of the Year, and the organization was great. So I guess right off the bat, what was your raw reaction to hear that announcement? And were there any X factors in this year of pro for you that you felt really helped propel you to being among the best in the Mets farm this year regarding pitchers?
Yeah, no, it was just an awesome year all around. Seeing the way it wrapped up, and then obviously getting, that kind of accolade at the end of the year. It was really cool. It wasn't something, I really had in mind going into the season or anything. Obviously, I wasn't telling myself to win Pitcher of the Year. I was just trying to pitch. But yeah, no, honestly, the season started off a little slow. But, eventually you get to a point where you just got to let loose and really free yourself up. And I think I just kind of found my comfort and my tempo at the right time of the year. And I think really once I got promoted to Brooklyn, that was like a catalyst and kind of just sent me going. But just first year of pro ball was really cool, just to meet all different guys, hear different stories, see all the different routines and stuff, and just constantly intaking and putting out new information. I'm excited for next year for sure.
Absolutely.
Dominic, you just brought up that promotion to Brooklyn, and something that I've been really curious about for a while with you is your numbers actually got better after the promotion. I mean, they were great in both Port St. Lucie and in Brooklyn, but usually when guys get, promoted, when they get elevated, you see, at least the first few outings, their numbers dip a little bit because you're playing better competition. Why do you think you actually got better as the season progressed and you got called up from Port St. Lucie to Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think, yeah, just looking at the numbers, yeah, definitely. I've at the end of the year, we had the exit meetings and we kind of split the stats, like my year in St. Lucie and Brooklyn. And yeah, the one in St. Lucie was manageable, but I think it was really just like I said, I caught my tempo and I kind of got my groove and I really just stuck to that. So kind of having that momentum going straight into Brooklyn and then just being all giddy because it's my first promotion of my career, really. I mean, besides getting out of the complex league, which is whatever. But I think it was just a bunch of emotions and knowing how long I wanted to be there, specifically like in the city, and like it was finally my time to be there, and I had a bunch of family out there that I knew was coming to games and stuff. So just really, I was looking forward to getting to Brooklyn more than anything. And just once I was there, I was like, this is incredible. Like, let's just keep it going, you know?
And just to follow up on that, man, I mean, you've spent the bulk of your life pitching in Arizona, went to college at Dallas Baptist in Texas, spent some time down in Florida, obviously with Port St. Lucie. So, you've been in the southern parts of the U.S. for pretty much, the bulk of your life and your baseball career. What was it like getting to New York, pitching in one of the 5 boroughs, adjusting to, the craziness that is New York City? What was that all like for you on a personal level, not just on a baseball level?
On a personal level, I feel like I resonated pretty well, honestly. Just the way my family is, like, it's half Irish, Italian, half Puerto Rican, Mexican. So I mean, there's really always a lot going on. And like I said, I have family out there, so I'd gone out and visited plenty of times, and we'd gone out to Poughkeepsie and then took the train down to the city, Times Square type deal, just some tourist stuff, stopping through. But yeah, once I was out there, and like I guess like after like the first night in my apartment and stuff, I was in a Spring Hill suite in St. Lucie for like 3-4 months. Like that was miserable. So just honestly, if they just sent me out the door and said I was going somewhere else, so be it. But yeah, just being out there really just freed me up. And honestly, I think a bigger adjustment for me was when I first started throwing in Florida. The temperature out there, man, it was so humid. I got so used to the dry heat, I guess. I mean, I played in Dallas, so I got a gist of that, of what that's like. But man, when I got to Florida, that was next level. Like I had to bring multiple shirts out to starts. Like I was wringing out my clothes between, training and throwing. Like it was pretty brutal out there, for sure.
Yeah, no,
So,
that
so Dom, you brought up Texas, Joe. You brought up Texas, Dallas Baptist. That's where you went to school. Is this right? Interdisciplinary studies, management, and kinesiology. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just studying eligibility, man. I knew I was a ball player.
Okay. Well,
To be quite honest with you.
the reason I ask is because, kinesiology, the study of like kind of the movement of the body, especially as it relates to sport. I don't know how much you got into that, but realistically, like kind of the way the game is going, there's a little bit more of that science and, using that knowledge that you can gain and having understanding of how your body works, being able to utilize it in training, which you're doing out in Arizona right now, and then relating that onto the field. How much of that are you doing? And I mean, maybe your studies didn't help you, but did your studies help you at all?
No, it's funny. To an extent, it did, because I mean, when I started out because I went to junior college first for 2 years. Then when I first started, my degree plan, it was for kinesiology. That was my main major. And then once I transferred, something with credits transferring from JUCO. I don't know. I've heard thousands of stories about credits not transferring. So, yeah, long story short, had to redirect. And yeah, pretty much I saw the interdisciplinary studies and it fell into the line of kinesiology and sport management. And I was like, those are both up my alley. I was sold out to baseball. Like I really had no plan B. If I had a plan B, it was to get this piece of paper after 4 years and then go get like probably into trade school or something like that, to be honest. But um, no, I think it did help for sure. I mean, just when I got to DBU, my first pitching coach there was a major in biomechanics, and he's a pitching coordinator with the Pirates now, Josh Hopper. But he taught me a lot of stuff about the body, and then just learning, like, kind of rehearing terms that pretty much I had to read through a book that I had no comprehension of, and then hearing it in the context of like baseball and a movement pattern. I was like, that resonates with me a lot. Well, so I started to understand that a lot more, and then kind of once that door opened, I learned about the analytics and how to read those kinds of numbers. And yeah, honestly, at DBU, I really found like a solid structure of like knowing what makes me good and not just hoping to go out there and be good. Like I figured out like what makes me good.
Before we get off of DBU, because I got to ask this, my guy, I played with him as a Vic Black. Did you ever meet him when you were out
Vic
there
Black.
in Dallas
No,
Baptist?
no, I did
Okay,
not, but
okay.
I definitely heard of him. That's the arm doctor, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I seen his page. I definitely seen his page. But
yeah. He's out there in Texas still, in Amarillo. That's where he's from, but he's still doing his thing.
for sure. Yeah. No, I never got to meet him or anything like that. But I'm sure he's a cool guy.
Going back to you mentioning analytics, to this point, how much do you weigh analytics in your game? As a high riser already gained his first year done in pros, is that something that's you would say you're fairly comfortable with, or analytics to this point one of those things where you're kind of fine with or without them? Like, just take me through your thought process when it comes to the numbers.
Yeah. No, I definitely now I'm comfortable with it for sure. But I mean, once I first learned about that information, I was learning, how that made me good and how that applied to me. Like I got pretty giddy about it, and I was learning like I was distinctive in this type of way. And so, and for a certain frame of time, I kind of got just over invested into the numbers, and I would start tweaking out if like my numbers weren't just on the spot on average of what they regular are. And then, it just turned to things kind of getting too mechanical and jerky and just trying to do too much. And then, eventually I took a step back from that and kind of I found the balance in between pretty much. So, I mean, I know that's very valuable information, but at the end of the day, like you got to go out and like execute. You got to pitch a game, like just throwing one fastball with some good induced vert like that don't get you paid. So.
And, staying on the topic of numbers once more, there's something that I know that's been around you pretty much leading up to your draft, and that's your spin rate, especially with the fastball. That's something that's gotten a lot of attention. So I'm curious for you, when you look at your RPMs, I know that they've been above average for your heater, for example. I mean, even above average from MLB pitchers, for instance. I mean, it's a big deal. So for you, is this something that you purposely built up over time, or is it something simply that was natural that came? Because I think of example, Mets reliever Seth Lugo. He spent years and years on end building a spin rate with his curveball, and that's something that I really pride himself in. So I'm just curious for you, what has that process been like with having, such an above average spin rate with your heater and overall pitches?
Yeah, no, it was definitely something I picked up over time. I started out as an outfielder, and then once I made varsity in high school, that's when I got turned to a PO. But so I kind of always knew I had a good arm. I knew I could just like I like throwing the crap out of a ball when I was an outfielder. So I was always doing long toss and doing janitor throws during in and out and all that. But yeah, I guess I kind of knew I had a chooch on me. And then once I got to junior college, I was getting off the bump more, starting to work as a starter, and we're starting to see how that late life kept playing. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm starting to throw harder. That's awesome. And then, like I said, DBU learned that whole analytics side. And yeah, pretty much like the first time I threw in a scrimmage, and my coach asked if I was using some spider tack. And I just was like, no, I don't know what that is. And then he showed me my numbers. And then that was literally the first meeting we had discussing my numbers. I was like, that's crazy. And so kind of just gradually working with that. Like I started, like I said, I like doing long toss, but I started modifying the long toss where it wasn't as much as like an intensity, like max long toss, but kind of just working on like a perfect rainbow, just getting that right backward spin and just then working it in, putting that on a line with the same spin. Just little stuff like that helped me maintain that. But yeah, no, I'm working to have a 3,200 RPM banger like Seth Lugo, but it's around 3,000, so we're close.
That's
we're
awesome.
close.
Getting there.
That's elite, baby. That's elite.
It's elite. It's elite.
Yeah.
That's
Especially you do
ridiculous.
that without any type of substance. I mean, that's what always mind boggles me because, when, of course, when the sticky substance breakdown happened over the past 2 years, Seth Lugo was very adamant. He came out and said, how much he personally appreciated that, at least because he's someone that, worked this in his craft for years on end, making sure that he got this pitch a certain way to have the type of ridiculous break that he did. So to see more guys coming up like yourself that have it natural, I mean, that's just great to see for years to come, not only for you, but for many other young players out there. But
For
going
sure,
back to
for
you,
sure.
Joe. Oh,
Yeah,
my
no,
bad.
actually, Tyler, I'm glad that you kind of steered the direction towards spin rate because that's exactly where I wanted to chime in.
Yeah.
Dom, I've been really curious because it's pretty well documented that the Mets were one of the later franchises to implement, an importance on analytics and things such as spin rate. Obviously, now under Steve Cohen, things are changing, but in prior regimes, it really, the Mets were flat out late to the party there. So how much of what you do when it comes to spinning the ball was on your own accord and really started, working with Hopper at DBU? And how much of an emphasis do the Mets now at lower levels of the minors really place on it?
I would say this past year, yeah, when I was trying to work on spin or something like that, yeah, that was kind of more of my own doing, just on what I learned at DBU and how those certain drills, brought those elevations to, my pitches. But yeah, no, there really wasn't too much stuff that they implemented that was like we had a couple of clean fuegos brought out one time, but I mean, it wasn't anything too crazy. And yeah, like you said, we're kind of moving into a new age of baseball, and not all the the faculty in office are on board because they grew up managing a younger or a different generation of baseball where it was just much more basic and all the electronics were left out. But I think honestly, like, unless you really got some good reference to maybe an older coach or something that has worked with some younger guys and seen how spin can help them, maybe that's a good chance to take it. But other than that, I think the more valuable, like, newer information you learn, like, comes from the guys you're just like practicing around, really. Like, like on pitch stuff, like I worked on like pitch stuff with my homie Mike Vassell. He was my throwing partner for a while, but he was kind of coming into that new age, and he was kind of in the same boat. He had gone to Virginia, and they had like an older coaching staff, and so that wasn't as big on their priority list. But growing up, like, while we're watching this younger generation of baseball, we're seeing like how much these spin rates are standing out and stuff. And obviously, we want to work on that for ourselves. And so, yeah, pretty much most of it was just on us, really.
All right,
Yeah,
so
and
Dom,
I
I'm
wanted
going to
to
put myself back in my old shoes and say, all right, I'm catching. You're the guy on the mound. What is it that I got to do when I come out to the mound to get you to smile, like to get you to laugh when things aren't going right? Like, what's your thing? Like, what do you do? What do you do off the field? Are you are you a foodie? Are you a video game guy? You got a girlfriend? You guys travel? Like, what's your deal? What's your deal? I got to know more about you. That's how I know how to lighten the mood out there.
Honestly, I'm probably the one to beat you to making you laugh as you're walking up. Like, whether it's like a face or something, you walk up. Like, my catcher in junior college, who was like one of my best friends off the field too. Like, it was just so funny when like we knew we had to slow like something down, and he knew he just had to come talk to me just just for a couple pitches, give me a breather. And it was like, I know he's coming out here to bullshit with me. Like, he's not gonna say anything like, "Hey, just make sure your hands out front." Like, no, I like to be loose. I like to be loose.
Yeah.
So, no, I like that you said that. Like, what can I say to like, kind of break you out of that, like that killer kind of going? But probably something like fantasy football related. Just, you making any trades lately? You making any trades? Or so you see the roster, blah blah blah, something like that. Something like that.
So this is a guy. Come September, I was this guy too. If you're not in the starting, if you're not starting that day, Dom, I'm guessing it's a Sunday. It's your team's playing. You got to know what's going on. Like, come on, you go in the clubhouse and just to give it like a little flip, like, oh yeah, got 3 touchdowns. I had a T. Higgins today, baby. Woo!
Low key. I'm not gonna throw myself under the bus, but I'm up to date. We're up to date for sure.
Yeah, I'm done, so I can say that. I used to do that. Yeah,
Rex,
I hate you guys. I was the guy in college who'd be like going up and down the dugout yelling at guys if they were talking about the NFL.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "We have a game out there. Put the damn phones away."
That's funny.
You know, speaking of phones, we got a great question here in the live stream, and especially for a younger player like you, Dominic. What has your experience been like, on social media dealing with news regarding yourself? Is that something that gets to you easily in either positive or negative fashion, or are you quick to kind of push that aside, go about your day? I mean, I really don't know what it's like for a player of your age now, because again, social media it's completely different than what it was even just, for instance, when rec was coming up. So how's that all been like for you?
Hey, it hasn't been that long.
Oh, wait, Rec, come on.
Come on.
Wait, you had a flip phone when you started, Rec. This is
Rick, you could be Wardy's dad, man. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's funny. No, it can definitely be a variable in a player's headspace. Like any player you talk to is gonna say, "Nah, stuff doesn't matter." But when it gets sent to them from someone like, "Hey, I just saw your name was thrown," and it's like, "What are you thinking?" It's like those are just like Twitter rumors. Honestly, it's tough though, because there's been trades that have gone down and players literally find out they get traded on Twitter before
Yeah.
they've learned from the team, and it's like, so it's crazy. You really just got to stay present with that stuff. Like honestly, the social media and all like the hype up stuff, it's a bunch of BS. I give credit to like all the like those young viral like high school athletes or like crazy 5 stars and whatever. They got their blue checks in sophomore year of high school, and now there's NLIs too, and they're getting all these bags off that. I'm like, bro, that's crazy. You're doing that young. But no, it could be a good or bad thing. It could be a good or bad thing. But for me, a lot of times I just try to just drain that noise out. Like about 99 point whatever percent of that stuff you read online is usually some BS. So,
Gotcha.
Well, Dom, I think we all really appreciate your time here tonight and you joining us, man. I do personally have one last question. I feel like you can really learn a lot about someone from looking at their Instagram. And so I'm on your page right now. And the picture that stands out the most to me is you. It looks like you're at Abuelita's house making some tamales.
Yes,
so
sir.
I got it. You said that you were part Mexican, right?
Yeah. See.
All right. So
Yeah.
I got to ask you, man, you're making tamales in the kitchen. What are you putting in that masa? Are you a beef guy? Are you a pork guy? What's your go-to for the tamales?
We just keep it chill. We got red pork and green pork, which is pretty standard masa, nothing fancy. We just go over to the Food City, get some, get all the goodies, and yeah, we'll be doing that
Food
in
City, yeah.
probably Food City. That's the spot. Oh, yeah, that place. But yeah, no, we'll probably start those up in like another 2 weeks, and then we'll start making some coquito too, and just all the holiday goodies, cookies. Yep.
Yeah,
good time to be
coquito
home.
around the holidays, man. It does not get better than that.
My girlfriend's house on
Beautiful.
Thanksgiving. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Tita.
I love the
It's
green pork,
Tita.
by the way. If you're ever in
Yeah.
LA, I'm just
Oh,
letting
yeah.
you know right now. We got Food City here, and the green pork tamales. Those are my favorite. Get some salsa verde on the side of that thing, and
Yeah.
just go to town.
Say less.
I love it. I love it. Dom, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Really
For
appreciate
sure.
you.
Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
No.
Hey,
Of course.
I got to say one more thing to you real quick. Since we have the connection, you ever need anything, you let me know. I got you. I'll take care of you. Anything. Doesn't matter, day or night. You're in the right organization. You got good people around you, but
For
you
sure.
got the right agent. I can tell you that right now. But you ever need anything, you know how to reach out. Give me a shout.
I appreciate that. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you guys, man. Hope to see y'all again.
Thank you, Dominic.
Absolutely.
Have a great one.
Take care, man.
Well,
What a
guys,
great kid.
yeah, awesome. I just loved, because I had no expectations of how his personality would be truly coming into this. Perfect. Just nice, laid back, being himself. That's exactly what you want to see. And he's just, I think, a prime example of just this new wave of players that are coming in. Like it's crazy. He wins pitcher of the year when he was just drafted last year for the Mets in the third round. Like he's going to be a high riser for sure. And I know that's why I want to emphasize the spin rate too, because that was certainly a factor in the Mets drafting him when they did. And I mean, to see him already, I didn't get a chance to ask him, but he's already having solid development of his changeup. That's something that takes a couple years on end for a lot of pitchers, as they're building up to the pros to get. So he looks like he's very much ahead of schedule with everything, which is great to see for him and for the Mets.
Yeah, especially, and we'll talk about this more as the offseason progresses, as the show progresses. but this is a team that might not, we used to look at the organization and starting pitchers for days, and all of a sudden starting pitching is becoming a little thin for the organization, at least from within. And it's nice to know that, Scherzer's a guy who's got 2 years left on his deal. Jake, who the hell knows what's going to happen there? Carrasco's probably one more year. And it's nice to know you got a guy like Dom, waiting in the minors and just chomping at the bit, putting up numbers down there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the highest riser as of now among the Mets core of their top pitching prospects. I think he's the only one to his level in Brooklyn, because before him, a year ago, it was JT Ginn, and then he was traded off to the Oakland A's that we saw. So yeah, no, he's already, in a really good spot for the Mets going forward. And that's great to see. But now let's pivot to the latest news and rumors. I'm going to break down quickly for you guys, because most people here on YouTube that are watching the show know, but especially for people in audio, you may not have known at least their thoughts on. The Mets did make their first offseason trade this past week. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just simply adding depth. The Marlins DFA'd earlier this past week, that being in Elizer Hernandez, who's a starting pitcher / swingman, and a right-hand reliever, that being a Jeff Brigham, who's famously known for giving up the Pete Alonso home run, the call by Gary Cohen, Scooter and the big man a couple of years ago. But now they're both in the Mets organization. The Mets gave up a single-A pitcher in doing so, who, while he can touch 100 on the gun, struggles mightily with his command. So this isn't a guy that Mets fans, as of now, I would say should lose sleep over. It just seems like a win-win trade. The Marlins get themselves a prospect when they DFA 2 guys for roster room based on the roster cutoffs last Tuesday. And for the Mets, they bring in 2 guys now who, especially for Trevor Williams, who's likely to be out, the Mets are looking for some more swingmans potentially at back half of the rotation. In the bullpen, that's where Elizer can come into play should he get his command right. It's funny how we're talking about spin rate, and one of Elizer's biggest issues this past year was a lack of spin rate in his fastball. I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning for that is, but that's something that was an issue for him with the Marlins this past year. But I think the big thing is Jeff Brigham had around a 3.5-year reign, 24 innings for the Marlins this past year. A guy that's going to be competing for a bullpen spot for a Mets team that can use all the bullpen help in the world. You can never have enough depth and never have enough arms. So starting off with you, Rec, any raw reactions or thoughts on this lower level deal for the Mets?
I think you get 2, quality arms. Hernandez is a guy who can potentially help you. If it's kind of that Trevor Williams-esque role, starter, reliever, give you innings whenever you need him. Is he going to be to the level of a Trevor Williams? I don't know. He's younger. He was a pretty decent prospect coming up for Miami. So, there's some stuff there. The Mets obviously want to see what they can get out of him. For Brigham, that's literally, you said it, bullpen depth type arm, and see what you get out of him. Fastball slider guy. So, not a whole lot there, but very similar to most relievers nowadays, and that's okay. Do what you do it really well. It's going to be a matter of whether or not this guy can, contribute some quality innings for the Mets. I don't anticipate that, but you never know what you're going to get. You get 2 guys who have options. That makes roster flexibility that much more, that much easier for this Mets organization. Towards the top, these guys can shuffle between AAA and the big leagues, and they can be on that taxi squad, and that's going to help out a lot.
Before I get to you, Joe, I just want to add, perfect point is the fact that they both have minor league options, and they're both under team control until at least 2025 offseason. So these are guys that, if they bring you any upside, could be a bargain for the Mets going forward, because let's be real, the Mets are not going to be able to single-handedly buy their bullpen, especially after already shelling out $100+ million to Edwin Diaz. So, Joe, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bargain shopping move. In an ideal world, hopefully these guys are both on the AAA roster in Syracuse come opening day. I'm not really impressed with either one of them. Brigham. The only reason I remembered him is because Pete Dick the guy, right? So, I mean, that's, we'll see what happens with those guys. They're not going to be high leverage guys. They're not going to be 7th, 8th inning guys. Like Rex said perfectly, taxi squad, and hopefully they open the year in AAA and we make some bigger moves. I mean, right now the guy on top of my wish list is Alexis Diaz. But that's just me personally, me and every other Met fan.
Oh, Alexis Diaz and another Alexis, and Alexis Reyes, who was
Alex Reyes. Yep.
Alex Reyes, correct. I knew I was in the ballpark there. He's dealt with a plethora of injuries that we've seen, especially over this past year, cut by the Cardinals. But he's a guy where, I feel that it's inevitable that a top contending team is going to take a flyer on him and see what they can get. Similar to how the Mets did the waiver claim with the Yankees for Steven Ridings. Electric stuff, just hasn't played the past year due to injuries. Could the Mets maybe try to do another similar thing here with Reyes, or do they feel that they've already kind of done that enough with acquiring Steven Ridings, for example? Reyes, however, when he's on, that guy's literally one of the better relievers in baseball. I mean, don't get it twisted. So he's definitely a name to keep out there in the mind of Mets fans if he will be a potential fit. And one more acquisition the Mets made since last time we did our previous podcast was, I'm not going to harp on much, William Woods. He is a 23-year-old towering right-hander, picked up waivers from the Braves. Not too much to say about him. I would just say the one upside is the fact that he already made his MLB debut this past year at the age of 23. He was a high riser in the minor leagues, had a solid year in AAA. Nothing crazy, though, when you look at his numbers. So just someone where, again, more minor league options, more depth for AAA. And should he get an opportunity at all over this next year due to injuries that are inevitable, maybe he could be another sneaky guy for you out of the pen if need be. But definitely lower on the totem pole, I would say, among those. But let's talk for a minute. Let's have some debate, shall we? Brandon Nimmo, he's been sought after by everyone and their mother, it feels like, in the MLB, and rightfully so. That's what happens when you are the top center fielder out there via free agency. We know that the San Francisco Giants are the latest team to be inquiring on him. I mean, literally, at least half the league. We're seeing teams that you wouldn't even expect to be in play are now in play for Nimmo because they're willing to shift their center fielder for the corner just to put him in center, as you should rather. But in the scenario where Brandon Nimmo does not return to the Mets, which I will say I will still be beyond surprised by because I don't think there are truly any viable options for the Mets to replace him. I'm not in love with the idea of shifting Marte to center. I think that's silly. I think that's a recipe of disaster waiting to happen for a guy that's already in his mid-30s playing in the corner already the entire past 2022 season. But there is one guy out there that certainly has a defense, but like a lot of the other players, isn't as known for their offense, at least not in recent years. But if he gets his swing right, could be a potential bargain in Cody Bellinger. Now, the belief as of now is that Belly's only looking for a one-year deal, which I like. It seems like he wants a prove-it deal between, upwards of $15 million, I would say, as of now. He's going to be, I'd imagine, less than the QO that he was not offered by the Dodgers. So, Rex, starting with you, what's your thoughts on Cody? Because for me personally, I think there's plenty of potential there for sure. But for a guy that, was MVP type player in 2019 to dealing with massive ailments with his shoulder, multiple injuries, swing looks completely gone. Him and Joey Gallo, like their launch angle really, really concerns me. Is he someone that can get his swing rate and a change of scenery? Or if the Dodgers can't get him right, that type of analytically involved organization, no one can. What's your thoughts on Cody?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love Cody Bellinger. As a person, I got to meet him Justin Turner's wedding years ago. Great dude. This was already after he already had plenty of success in the big leagues, Rookie of the Year. Just an awesome guy, and so from that perspective, would love to have him as a teammate. So I mean, this guy in a Mets uniform, it'd be great. Realistically, I just don't see the fit for him because why would he come to a place that's known as not a great place to hit? This is not a hitter's ballpark, Citi Field. I would say that the NL East might be one of the best pitching divisions in all of baseball. There's a number of reasons that it just doesn't make sense for him to come here. Now, you talk about his swing, and he's a pull guy. He's not someone who goes the other way a bunch. The shift is going to help him a lot, or the lack thereof, a shift, I should say. Going to be illegal. That's going to help him. I mean, look, he doesn't have to even think about trying to go the other way. He can pull a ground ball through the hole now. He can pull a soft line drive, and there won't be a second baseman standing in the middle of right field for him. There's a lot of things that are going to be easier for Cody Bellinger come this year. Same goes with Joey Gallo. I just again, why would he come to New York? That it's just, there's too many factors for me. Unless the money was really that much more than anyone was willing to give him, which I don't see the point in that. If I'm the Mets, if I'm going to give that much money for any year, it's going to go to Brandon Nimmo. It's not going to go to Cody Bellinger. I love Cody Bellinger. He's got the potential to be a much better player than Brandon Nimmo, even though Brandon Nimmo is a fantastic center fielder. This guy was, I think, 1,100 OPS MVP. I mean, we're talking Judge type numbers outside of the 62 home runs. I mean, that's how good he was back in 2019. So yeah, realistically, I just don't see the fit for him. Love him, don't see the fit for him in New York. There's some other teams, actually, even in the NL East, where I actually really do like the fit for him, and that's kind of scary because if he does find his swing, it's going to be tough. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention: if New York fans got a hold of him and he wasn't doing well and started booing him, I'm just like, he's gone through enough, and it's not to say he couldn't handle it. I'm sure he could, but that's not something that, if you're looking for every reason to accept a place and go to try to succeed and revamp your career, that might be a tough place to do it. Same with Philly. And I actually think I like the fit for him in Philly, except for the fans could crush him. And then what? So that's got to be a factor.
Philly, where's he playing in Philly? Because they got Marsh.
You got to be bumping Brandon Marsh and putting him in center.
Why? Why does Brandon Marsh have to play center field?
I mean, he was really good for them when they acquired him.
That's an easy bump. If Bellinger returns to Bellinger of 2019, that's an easy bump.
Oh, if he returns, I agree.
Brandon Marsh is like a 700 OPS guy, right? Like, he's not going to hit home runs. He might hit for a decent average, and he's going to play good center field, right?
Marsh has some pop. I don't know. I've been to 3 Angels games this year in person. He hit
you always
rockets in 2 of them, games. Rockets in 2 of them.
I know the guy has pop, but does it show in the games? Has it shown in his career?
No, he's also young. I mean, look, I'm on your side. If you have Bellinger versus Marsh.
Young-ish.
I mean, he looks like he's like 35, but isn't he like, how old is he? 25?
He's only been in the league for 2 or tops 3 seasons. He's on your team controlling like till 2027, 2028.
But Rex, to your point though, if you're looking for a 1-year prove it deal like Bellinger is, New York is probably not the place to go do that. I mean, look, and people
not even Yankee Stadium, even though it's a great place to hit, I still wouldn't go there either if I was
a great place for him. But yeah, exactly. He'll get Bud Lights thrown at him if he's not performing well. But it's funny because
so Brandon Marsh, timeout. Brandon Marsh in the 1 percentile in K rate. 1 percentile. This guy strikes out as much as anybody else in baseball.
What percentile is Cody in?
Terrible walk rate. Probably the 1 percentile, I would imagine. I don't know.
Yeah.
Walk rate, 21st percentile. Not good. Expected weighted on base average, 14th percentile. Expected batting average, 20th percentile. This guy's not good, guys. Like, I'm sorry. It's just not there. Like, not for me to say that I wouldn't move him for Cody Bellinger or anybody else. I mean, look, he is only 24. He'll be 25 next season. I thought he was 26, 27. But I'm moving him for Cody Bellinger if I have the shot to, because of what Cody brings both defensively, but also on the bases. This guy's one of the best base runners in baseball. He's fast as heck. He actually has versatility. He can play first base if you need him to. And we know, look, Rhys Hoskins is great and all, but if Bryce Harper's healthy, maybe you can move him back to the out. You got the other 2 DHs.
You got Castellanos and Schwartz.
I was going to say you could move Hoskins to DH, but you can't.
That was the biggest factor that I was going to get.
If Castellanos isn't good again, maybe you can.
Yeah.
What, do you just get rid of Castellanos, you're saying?
No, you can't get rid of him.
He's on $100 million
contract. Good luck getting rid of that contract, But
okay.
Yeah, no, it's funny because when you look at the fact that Bellinger is really the only comparable replacement for Brandon Nimmo, and
at center,
to be comparable, and to be comparable, he would have to, return to his form of like 3 years ago. Now we're already talking about that. Scares me. And then I was just looking at next year's free agent class. Best center fielder next year, Harrison Bader. I mean, the guy had a great postseason, but he's probably the best center field option in next year's class. That to me makes it all the more important to lock up Brandon Nimmo to return. And I've reached the point where I was kind of, going back and forth and wavering on it. To me, it's like Brandon Nimmo returning is more valuable than deGrom returning, because when you look at how you can replace these guys, Nimmo just seems right now like the more irreplaceable option.
Yeah,
completely agree.
Based on position, I 100% agree with you. But it's funny that you mentioned, guys are a priority for the Mets. Who should they prioritize the most? Because we have seen of recent that, Jake is very much a top priority for the Mets, which no one should be surprised by. But we did see a couple of days ago reports that the Mets are under belief that Jacob deGrom will return should he be offered a similar contract to whatever, say, the Texas Rangers, the LA Dodgers, whatever an opposing team may offer him, as long as Steve Cohen comes out and says, yeah, we'll pretty much give you the same. Maybe there'll be a little tweak. Maybe there'll be some type of option or whatever, but we'll give you right around the same. And then Jake will likely return. So I want to know what your opinions on that, because for me, I think that I truly hope that's the case, because as much as there is upside if you land plenty of pitchers out there from ace levels to Carlos Rodon and Justin Verlander on the short term, Kodai Senga in the middle of the rotation, there's arms out there, even though that's top heavy. No one compares to Jacob deGrom to me. Even with all these uncertainties, there's no one out there that I think you should be willing to take a risk on for that high AAV more than Jacob deGrom. And it's okay if you guys have opposing opinions, because I saw, Joe, you kind of had a little smirk, like, I don't know about that one. Do you agree or disagree? Because for me, Justin Verlander, think he's not only 40, but he just missed 2 years with Tommy John. So in comparison, he's missed essentially the same amount of games that deGrom has in recent years.
Well, that's the thing. And Jake just missed 13 months. Jake hasn't put together a 30-plus start season since 2019.
Yeah.
So it's like, they always say the best ability is availability, right? There's no questioning Jake's talent, and he's probably the most talented pitcher alive. But how much does he really help the Mets? How much did he really help the Mets this year? It was, trade deadline came and went, and hey, we didn't do much, but we got deGrom back, and that's all we needed. And we really weren't a better team once he came back. So,
how much is that for him to blame, though?
He had some starts down the stretch. Look, again, the guy's only playing once every fifth day, so you can't blame him for stuff that happens when he's not pitching. But he had some starts down the stretch, Chicago Cubs start, the start in Atlanta late in the year. And it's like, obviously, you can look at any one game and say that's the difference between second place and first place. But there were a couple times we needed Jake down the stretch, and he just flat out didn't deliver. Oakland, I just named 3 September games, 2 of them against crap opponents, where Jake didn't show up. So, for me, it's like, I don't know. I hate using the word replaceable, right? Because you're not going to get a guy who throws 102 with a 95-mile-per-hour slider. But can you get, Rodon, Senga, Verlander? Can you get production out of those guys? Absolutely. Can you get as many or maybe more wins as Jake would give you? Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, it's why Nimmo is just leaps and bounds ahead of him in terms of value that he brings to the club.
I think what this all comes down to, and Ty, you mentioned that basically deGrom, can he stay healthy? Can he give you innings? Steve Cohen, it's going to come down to what Steve Cohen wants to do. Does he want Jacob deGrom on this team? Is he going to spend the $40+ million a year for Jacob deGrom to be on this team? That's all it comes down to. Does he value that as much as he does several guys? Or is he willing to pay Jake and still sign the same other free agents he was considering even without Jake? And that's really what they have to do. It's basically, do you sign Jake to a $40+ million deal, knowing you might not be able to count on him to be a $40 million player as far as availability? Because when he's on the mound, he's a $40 million player. There's no denying that. Even with the bad starts that you mentioned down the stretch, Joe, he's still the best pitcher in the game, because yes, he had those, but if he gets a full spring training under his belt and he gets a full season in, there's not going to be anybody better. There's just not. That's kind of what we saw with Aaron Judge this year. It was like, if he stays healthy, this guy can be the best player in baseball. He stayed healthy. He was the best player in baseball. That's the kind of stuff. That's exactly what I expect from deGrom if he's
Good
healthy.
point.
So it's literally just, is Cohen willing to say, I don't care if we spend $350 million. Yes, it would be $300 million without Jake, but it's going to be $350 with Jake, and we're just going to say heck with it, and we're going to win a World Series, or we're going to try. That's what it comes down to for me. You still need a lot of very good pitching on this team, even if you do sign Jacob deGrom. That's the one thing that, to me, as a business person, I'm just thinking, like, I don't have Steve Cohen money. I never will. None of us will. Even if I had $20 billion or whatever he's worth, I don't know what he's worth now. I still would have a hard time saying, yeah, sure, here's $45 million per year for 6 years, or whatever it's going to be. I don't know. And say, yeah, go ahead. Maybe you'll pitch half the time. Like that's not like that's hard to swallow. That's not something I would have fun doing. I would rather go out and get 3 guys or 4 guys, maybe not quite at that same price. You're going to pay them more than you would deGrom on an AAV, but at least you'd have 3 or 4 guys that can go out there and really help your team, and you can count on hopefully 2 of them to be healthy at the end of the season and pitch well. That's the way I see it. And so I don't see there being a match for Jake coming back from that perspective, unless, like I said, Steve's just like, heck with it. I don't care. And that's okay. If he says that, good for him, good for the Mets, good for Jake, and good for all you fans listening to this, because man, can the Mets be really good if that's the case.
So speaking about what the Mets can do in the scenario where they bring back Jake, what's your thoughts on this? Because as we know, what came out earlier today, I've talked about on the channel, Ray, the Mets, they met via Zoom with Justin Verlander last week. I'm pretty sure we're all under the impression that he is what they're eyeing up as a plan B option. That's something that they're putting in for negotiations with Jake and others, for example. But you don't only have him. You have Kodai Senga, who the Mets have met with, and that apparently went well. I would say the Mets have a strong shot with the Padres being the favorite because, unfortunately, for people that want Kodai Senga, including myself, Senga is really, really close with Yu Darvish. They have a great connection relationship for years now. He also is former teammates with both Nick Martinez and Robert Suarez from just a year ago prior to them signing with the Padres last offseason. So there's already 3 guys in the Padres system, along with that beautiful weather in San Diego, that can favor that potential signing. But then you have the Carlos Rodon connection. My biggest reason as to why I don't think it'll happen is simply because I don't think the Mets are going to still be willing to give up the compensation pick. That and the injury history, I think that might be enough for the Mets to want to go away from signing Rodon to a Wheeler-esque contract, even though that there's a lot of upside there. And 2, then you have Jameson Taillon, who's the latest pitcher the Mets have been connected to. I think he's actually a very favorable Taijuan Walker replacement. And I'm going to put my foot down on that one. 1.6 walk per 9, 94 percentile in walks this past year per Baseball Savant. That's something that both Taijuan and Bass has struggled with immensely. When they had their struggles this past year, it was from their walk rate. And when I look at, Taijuan, I don't expect him to return because he has a big market. Bassett, I don't expect him to return for similar reasons, especially given his age already, even though I would like to see someone like him return. However, Taillon, what do I like? Similar to Bassett as a 6-pitch mix. As long as he's not hitting stuff right down the pipe, he has some nice location. And I think
it does that a lot.
Exactly. But if there's anyone that can get him right, I have confidence in Jeremy Hefner, Yeager's, the Mets' current pitching coaching staff. I think that they really could potentially get the best out of Taillon for a guy that's going to come cheaper more than likely than both Taijuan Walker and Chris Bassett alike. So putting Taillon aside for a second, though, Rex, starting with you, what's your thoughts on the Mets on a rotation next year of Jacob deGrom 1, Max Scherzer 2, Kodai Senga 3, because that very well can still happen in the scenario where you do not, where you bring back Jacob deGrom. That's still in the works based on the presumed price point for Senga. Number 4 would be one of Cookie, Peterson, 5 the other way around. Is that rotation comfortable enough for you entering 2023? And in the scenario where, say, depth really becomes an issue with Cookie, Peterson, then you, of course, look to upgrade that at the trade deadline.
So that's assuming McGill would be like a 6th starter swing.
Yeah, one of McGill or Pearson, whoever does best at a sprain, makes the 5-spot of the rotation.
I would still, even if those were my guys, and look, the upside there is tremendous. They could be phenomenal. There are question marks surrounding deGrom. Could be hurt, injury history, recent injury history alone is question marks. Performance-wise, dude's amazing. Max Scherzer, question marks surrounding him. Getting older, look, he was great last year, but there were a couple injuries that popped up, mostly typical things, but also as you get older, those things happen more frequently. And can I count on him late in the year? Can I count on deGrom late in the year? No. Kodai Senga, there's question marks. I love the talent. Again, this guy could be phenomenal. Like, the potential of what you're talking about is the biggest 3-headed monster in baseball. Like, great. They could all not be present in October. And by that, I mean, I don't know anything about Kodai Senga's injury history, but realistically, will he be there and will he be great in October? I don't know. This Mets team isn't trying to get to the playoffs anymore. I think even though they only
Agreed.
made it one time, like in recent memory, I think they're already at that point where even though they have to revamp their roster because they have so many guys who are free agents, they should be in the playoffs every year. And so it doesn't become, is this team going to be in the playoffs? Because it becomes, is this team going to win the World Series? And when you have guys in your rotation that are that big of question marks, that gives me pause. Cookie and Peterson / McGill as 4, 5, and 6, great. I still want a 7th that I'm actually comfortable with in any scenario, and maybe even an 8th. But that a lot of times should come up from the farm system. It shouldn't be guys you have to go out and buy. Unfortunately for this team right now, it's still guys you have to go out and buy until Dom Hamel is, ready and to come up and make that jump, which heck, for all I care, he probably is. I mean, I love the kid just talking to him today, but they're not going to trust them to do that quite yet. So it comes, you got to buy some more guys. So what is Steve willing to do? Is he willing to go out and buy that many arms and make that as, I don't know. I'm not really that comfortable with that scenario of those 6. I need more, and I would still feel like there's too many question marks, even in the top 3.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good 6-manner right there. Jake, Max, Senga, Cookie, and then Peterson, McGill. Talent-wise, I love it. To Rex's point,
Yes.
availability-wise, it's, Scherzer's a guy who I can confidently say is going to give you 24 starts. And as a number 2, what's he slotted to give you? 33? Jake is another guy who I hope gives us 24 starts. So for me, and I know that this is going to get expensive and therefore it's probably unrealistic, I want to run it back with Chris Bassitt. Because say what you want about Bassitt and his shortcomings down the stretch in Atlanta against San Diego, bad. I get it. Chris Bassitt was the one constant the Mets had all year long. And don't forget, Bassitt also, he pitched the most innings last year that he's ever thrown in his career. So figure now he's got that under his belt. Maybe that's to blame for Bassitt. I'll be fair here. I called Jake out for the starts against Chicago, Atlanta, and Oakland. Well, Bassitt had bad starts against Chicago, Atlanta, and San Diego.
Brutal,
So, maybe it's because it was the longest season of his life. He hadn't pitched that many innings yet in his life. Run it back with him. The guy's a dog. He's got Scherzer's competitiveness, which is so important to me. When Bassitt's on the mound, he hates you. When you step in that box, he's not just trying to beat you. He's the kind of guy like Scherzer who's trying to kill you. And I love that mentality, that competitive nature. I think that he was the most, reliable guy, the best guy to count on from start to finish. You had Ty in the first half. You had Scherzer at points, Jake at points. Start to finish, Bassitt was the guy. So, again, maybe it's too expensive. But if you can run it back with Jake, Max, and Bassitt as your top 3, and then mix in Senga, Cookie, and then have Peterson and McGill as like 6, 7, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that dreams are made of right there.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Senga situation, especially, Senga is essentially the Bassitt replacement. I really don't see a world where you'd be able to land both. Again, Steve Cohen can prove us wrong. He's proven a lot of Mets fans wrong since becoming owner these past couple of years. But Rec, I did want to slightly counter. What would you say would be a better fit instead of rotation with all these uncertainties? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at the pitchers out there amongst the better ones, a large portion of them have uncertainties, whether it's with previous health issues, age. It's not like this is a market where it's like, all right, you don't go for Jacob deGrom, fine, because you got guys that are normally available via trade, but in free agency, healthy players, like, I don't know, Shane Bieber, just guys that are more reliable, younger, Corbin Burns, like those. If those guys are made available, I think we have a completely different discussion via free agency. But because we don't, and this is how the Mets need to build in the short term, I just don't see how you can get much better when it comes to not only talent, but that same risk.
Well, Joe already mentioned one in Chris Bassitt. I mean,
that's true.
But I'm not saying that this free agent crop of starters is fantastic, and I love a bunch of them because I don't. Realistically, 2 of my favorites are guys in Bassitt and Walker who just became free agents from the Mets. And I say Walker because despite his injury history, since he's been a Met the last 2 years, he's been reasonably healthy. He's gone out there and made most of his starts.
It's been a consistency thing, not a health thing.
I mean, the only consistency problem I had from him was the second half of 21, but that was coming off of not pitching for 2 years.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, no, I'm not
I have no qualms with this guy after he just went out and pitched pretty much every fifth day in 21, pretty much every fifth day in 22, and showed me in 22 that he was much better in the second half than he was in that second half of 21. So I give credit to that, and he's earned that kind of trust to me to say he'll go out there and give me the innings. Look, there aren't a ton of guys that you're going to find on the field. That's why you have got to develop these guys. That's why this organization is not trading prospects for, other players, whether it's position players, pitchers, it doesn't matter, because you need guys you can count on that you can call up and down. That's why that trade for those two Marlins makes more sense than people will even give it any credit for, because it's such a low-level deal, which is fine. But at least you got guys that if you need them, maybe you can count on them. I mean, Hernandez has had some injury history, so maybe not. I don't know. But realistically, you've got to have innings. You have to have, and quality innings. It can't just be innings. Like, the one thing I despise in baseball is the $20 million a year starter who just goes out there and puts up a 4.5 but makes 32 starts. Good for you. I don't get that. Sorry. That's not good enough for me. I'm not saying I got to go out and pay $30 million for guys to put up threes. I don't agree with that either. But you got to have guys coming up from your minor league system that you can rely on. And this team has not for years. It's been atrocious what they've been bringing up out of the minor leagues for the most part. And to me, that's where I just want to see this organization get better. They are. It's going to take time. I don't have enough patience. And this team, unfortunately, with the way free agency goes every year, you're not going to find reliable guys. And that's what's frustrating. So, yes, I'm going to tell you I'm not going to feel great about that starting six guys you mentioned. But is there a better option? Not much of one. That's the problem. Do I feel more comfortable maybe giving the money to Rodon instead of deGrom? I don't know. I don't know. He's had injury history too. He's younger. There's that. He looked fantastic in San Francisco last year. My goodness. He looked great the year before in Chicago on, limited starts. But realistically, it's never going to be a perfect starting 5 or 6. I get that. But when I have that many question marks surrounding those top 3, and I know I'm not going to be able to count on them right now in October, that gives me pause, and that's the problem for me. That's why I like Bassett. That's literally why I like Bassett. I know he'll be available in October, and I know he'll give me at least a good start. There's a good chance he'll go out and give me 6 with 2 runs, 3 runs. That's okay. Offense, get better, score some dang runs. We're good.
It was a passionate rant right there. I
Sorry.
love it. I love that. I love that.
That was the best.
What was going on while that rant was going on? We had people getting blocked in the chat. We had a lot going on while you were ranting there, Recker. To your point, and this was early on in the rant about Walker. It's yes, we've seen back-to-back years with second half declines. 2021 was much more severe than 2022. Also, don't forget Walker. Each of the last 2 years has eclipsed his total in innings pitched, much like Bassett. So, you're getting a guy who next year will hopefully have his 3rd consecutive healthy year and, will hopefully have an even better second half than he had this year compared to where it was, in 2021. That's why, for me, I'd rather overpay a bit to get a Ty Walker. Say Bassett's out of the question. Say the Mets are looking at Jameson Taillon. I would rather overpay for Ty Walker than get Taillon. I mean, personally, Tyler, you seem to like Taillon. I don't trust this guy at all. I
like him as a Walker replacement, given his market value.
Don't need a Walker replacement then, if that's the case. Don't get to a point where because to me, Taillon, yeah, you're right. He's the replacement for Walker, not for a Jake, not for a Bassett. If you're going to replace Walker with Taillon, just re-sign Taijuan Walker. It's that simple to me.
I agree with you. I would like that. I just don't see a world where that's going to happen. I think Walker is going to get more years and higher AAV to the point where it's simply out of the Mets' hands for what they want to do. That's what I think. I don't think I could be wrong. I know the pitching market's really expensive, but I think Taillon is going to be at a much more realistic and affordable price versus Bassett and Walker. And if I'm proven wrong, then by all means, perfectly fine. I don't care. This is my understanding.
If you're talking Taillon 4 for 64, Walker 5 for 80, it's I'll give Walker the 5 for 80 as opposed to 4 for 64.
Let me put it this way. Why wouldn't Tyone get a similar contract to what Tyler Anderson just got?
I mean, that's a pretty cheap deal.
Exactly.
I think I don't know. I mean,
you just signed Ty Walker 2 years ago. What was it? 2 for 24, correct?
Yeah,
right.
Market's changed since then.
That was his deal. No,
Anderson
really.
just got the same AAV.
But I know that's crazy.
That's true. Yeah, over 3, and it did surprise me. I thought that was lesser than what he was going to get. Honestly.
Well, it was, but realistically, a guy who signed that early with the Crosstown team. I mean, look, I don't know Tyler Anderson, but I can connect some dots and say this guy, for whatever reason, liked to be in LA. Maybe he's got a family. Maybe his family liked to be in LA. He got an offer from the Angels and said, actually, yeah, we don't want to move. I don't care if I could make an extra, $5 million or $6 million or tack on another year. Like, I'd rather stay here. And that's great. Good for him. Like, I applaud someone who's willing to. That's how I see that deal going down. Not necessarily that was actually his market, but that he said, yeah, I'll take less to stay here. Why not?
Born and raised in Vegas. I mean, what MLB team is closer to Vegas outside of maybe the Diamondbacks than the Dodgers and Angels?
100%.
It's a fair point though, because when you think about location, what if in that hypothetical the same thing happened where Tyone loves New York, doesn't want to leave there, but doesn't see a path back to the Yankees? Could be a similar situation.
I mean, if he loved New York, not to say I love New York, but Jameson Tyone, big country boy, like, bless his heart if he does. Good for him, but it didn't seem like a good fit to me, to be honest with you. That's my opinion from the outside.
Yeah, it's funny because you could say the same thing about Jake, realistically.
Yeah.
Well, him and the Florida, spring training in Florida is cool. Like, that's one of the things about going to Texas that. Look, if they're willing to give them the money, there's no state tax in
Texas. That's the only reason why they're involved, is because they're willing.
Well, 100%. But like, he may not want to go to Arizona for spring training. I liked Arizona better for spring training, but the dude's from Florida. Like, maybe his family likes being in Florida. They like living basically at home, for 6 months out of the year instead of 4. So there's always that possibility.
Scherzer
I saw reports that deGrom in the offseason during spring training and whatnot was like going to his the gym at where his parents live in their complex and working out with all the old people. A lot of 55 and older complexes down there. My grandpa's in one of them, and that he goes to the gym and he does the elastic bands and all that, because deGrom, I mean, it's documented. He's not really a weightlifter. Not at least a heavyweight lifter.
If he tried to lift weights, I don't think anything good would come.
All right, Rick, you've been in the weight room with him.
Sorry, Jake. I love you.
What does Jake look like in the weight room, Rick?
I don't think I ever. Well, okay. I mean, I saw him in the weight room, but I don't remember him picking up weights.
Saw him in the room.
I saw him in there, like running or with bands. Like,
yeah.
I don't remember him picking up a weight though. Like, I really
and that's what he does. I mean, the reports are he works out at his parents' place in the off season, and Jake and doing water aerobics with the 75-year-old women. I love it.
He doesn't need to. Good for him. Best pitcher in the world.
And maybe that's another thing that, again, could help factor into things, because makes me think, yes, Max Scherzer, the main factors of why he came here is because he got an absolute bag. How do you say no to what he was offered? I mean, the Mets were reportedly well above what the Dodgers and other teams were looking to offer Max, but especially, Max, he had just built a new house, like right in Port St. Lucie, like right along that area. So that was just further reasoning as to why he was looking to come back to the NL East potentially, and it benefits that he comes there with the Mets. So, Jake's really interesting. I'm curious to see. I'm really curious to see too if a big fish is going to fall by time that we next talk, which will of course be after Thanksgiving, sometime next week, because there have been rumblings. Now, whether this leads to anything or not, there is belief that the market is really going to pick up after Thanksgiving. That gap between that and December 5th, the start of the winter meetings. So there's going to be a nice week window of potentially seeing some activity, and hopefully we'll have some big news to discuss on the channel and of course for the podcast soon, outside of Edwin Diaz's signing that happened. What feels like forever ago now. It's probably only been like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, it does. It's been a slow off season since Diaz and Tyler Anderson got signed. Guys, before we wrap it up, I did have one last question, because yesterday, next year's Hall of Fame ballot came out. And it's a pretty weak ballot. I mean, you've got some returners. Obviously, you've got all the steroid guys who you can debate, whether or not A-Rod, Manny Ramirez.
A lot of steroid guys are gone, too.
Well, Bonds, Clemens are gone. Yeah. But I mean, you've still got, Manny Ramirez, A-Rod, that debate. You've got some of the guys on the ballot who really haven't gotten love. Jeff Kent, I mean, best power hitting second baseman maybe ever. Billy Wagner, not getting any love. He's the most dominant left-handed reliever of all time. It's pretty wild to me. But just looking at the new guys, shout out R.A. Dickey. I guess, he gets his name on the ballot. Good for him. K-Rod, who was on.
Time out. Does R.A. Dickey get a vote?
He'll get a vote.
What?
I mean, LaTroy Hawkins got like 3 votes.
LaTroy Hawkins was he's literally one of the best relievers ever. I think, doesn't he have the most innings pitched all time as a reliever?
He was a great reliever for 2 decades, but I mean, he was still like a middle reliever, right? They don't.
Dude, R.A. Dickey is going to get a vote for the Hall of Fame? What did I do wrong? I messed up. You
didn't come back and rediscover yourself as a knuckleballer and get a Cy Young, man.
I should have. Actually, I just should have punted. I should have been a punter. I'd still be punting for some NFL
you would have been
team.
A hell of a long snapper.
Making millions, man.
You would have been a hell of a long snapper, Rick.
No, I couldn't. I'm not a long snapper.
If you just learn the technique, it's super easy. I learned it in like 30 minutes.
I know, you just throw the football, but this literally, you throw the football between your legs. That's the technique.
And then you sprint down the field, yell, "This is Sparta," and go hit someone. You could have been great at that, right?
I could have done that as the punter, though. People can't hit me. I get to kick it and then just boom. Be sick.
He's like a little Pat McAfee in you, just leading the league.
Oh, Rick, I could just see you being the last guy, one-on-one with a guy trying to return for a touchdown. You just fucking nuke them. You sideline them.
Kill somebody. I would.
I know.
You know what I used to love when I kicked? Because most punters in high school and stuff were whatever. They probably weren't the best player on the team. There was always one guy, a year, on some random team, that just thought, oh, I'm going to pick on the punter. And so I would kick the ball, and then, I didn't sprint down to go, because literally my coverage area was to be the safety. So I'm supposed to kind of hang back. Well, there'd always be 1 or 2 guys a year that would just try to blow you up. And I'd love it. Because first you wouldn't see them coming. So they might get a hit on, but they're not knocking me over. So I would be okay, my turn. And then I'd get to just absolutely deck them. And then I'd be so pissed, I'd just go run and try to kill somebody else. So that's what I would try to do as an NFL punter. I mean, there's different athletes out there in the NFL field. Let's make no mistake. I'd probably get my handed to me a couple times too, but it'd be fun.
You'd be screaming just like Waterboy. That's exactly what I envision you doing right away. All right, Joe, going back to your question.
Yeah, so Hall of Fame, right? So we listen to guys, R.A. Dickey, whether or not he gets a vote, over under is a half a vote on that one. Do it at Bet Online. Francisco Rodriguez, a guy who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory until he kind of fell out. But Carlos Beltran, to me, he's the only newcomer who you can make a case for. And this seems like a really heavy debate. To me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, this is a guy with 3 Gold Gloves, career 280 hitter. Usually, we talk about numbers, right? 3,000 strikeouts, 500 home runs. He's eclipsed the 1,500 RBI mark. He's got 1,587. One of the best power hitting switch hitters of all time. To me, it's a no-brainer. Carlos Beltran should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm just curious where you guys stand on this, because if he goes in, it's either with no cap or as a Met. So, and the Mets don't have a lot of Hall of Famers. So it would be interesting to see. What do you guys think about him and his Hall of Fame case?
You go first, Rick.
So my issue, I shouldn't say my issue. The issue with me thinking he gets in is that he's tied to a cheating scandal. Mm-hmm. That's gonna hold some weight. Should it hold a ton of weight? Personally, yes, it should hold some. And to me, character is a big deal in getting into the Hall of Fame. I know there's guys back in the 20s, I get it. They're already in. There's nothing you can do about that. Nowadays, you have the ability to vote. Character is a part of it. Anybody who plays the game would tell you what he did was wrong and that they don't appreciate it at all. So, yes, is there some level of, it's forgiven at some point? Maybe, but he never really took accountability for it. His statements after were not very good. So that I do hold against him. And I think some writers will. This is really the answer I'm going with, is what some writers will think. They will hold it against him. 2, I look at his body of work. The body of work's good. The numbers are good. Like all the metrics stack up. You go with this 7-year peak average and things like that. And he lines up like with all-time center fielders. Average Hall of Famer in, center fielder Hall of Famer. His numbers line up like with them. I look at his individual season performances. A couple stand out, great seasons, but I look at his it's kind of arbitrary, but his MVP voting. He finished top 5 once, 4th. He finished top 10 twice, that 4th place finish and a 9th place finish. Outside of that, this guy wasn't the best player in his league ever. Like, so it's hard for me to say he's a surefire Hall of Famer. It's hard for me to say, yeah, he needs to be in there. And it's hard for me to think that a voter is going to vote that way. And so because of the character clause or whatever you want to call it that I'm putting on this, that I think some writers will think about, and because he doesn't wow me when I think about a guy. I mean, it's hard when I played in the same era as somebody. I know I didn't play with him or against him that much or anything like that, but it's hard because I was so focused on what I was doing. I didn't see some of the great things he did. And I know Mets fans love this guy. So I know that some of the things I'm saying, God, there's probably in the chat, they're probably blowing me up, and that's okay. But it just, to me, he doesn't have that factor of, Hall of Famer. So to me, I personally, I think the more guys we say, oh, he's so close, he should be a Hall of Famer. Like, no, like the Hall of Fame is elite of the elite of the elite. This is not like oh, you were so close, you were really like, you should get in. No, that's not what the Hall of Fame's for. Like, I want to go there and show my kids, like, yeah, I played against Albert Pujols. Like, that's a surefire Hall of Famer. Like, yes, he's in the Hall of Fame. That's the kind of thing that I hold when I think of the Hall of Fame. And so to me, I don't think he's going to get in because I think there's enough writers that would agree with that. Will he? Who knows? Maybe. I don't know. The fact that Scott Rowland isn't in, that kind of, okay, I liked him. He's one of those guys, great character guy, hell of a player. I think he belongs in there. Andrew Jones, some of his numbers don't quite stack up. Some of the long-term numbers, of course,
10 straight Gold Gloves, man.
That's the thing. I mean, great defender. And
Jones
when I think about it,
one of those guys that that hurt himself by playing as long as he did.
100%. But when I think about it, I think of when I was a kid, how many kids said, I want to be Andrew Jones? A whole boatload. Like, everybody wanted to be the center, like Andrew Jones, center fielder Andrew Jones. Who are some of the other ones on the ballot that Todd Helton? Like, it's a tough one, but if Larry Walker got in, maybe that's where I don't like the whole like then you're playing that game and then you start letting people in. Maybe you shouldn't, but his numbers are stupid. Like, it's ridiculous. 5 straight years with over 1,000 OPS. Yes, he was in Colorado. I get it. Great career. Maybe he belongs in. I'm missing one. Billy Wagner, actually, I think should be in. Like, that's a guy that absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. I actually think, who didn't get enough love? Go look at John Franco's career. Go look at the numbers.
Yes.
Why is 100%. That guy not in the Hall of Fame? As far as one of the greatest relievers of all time, go back and look at did he ever crush a season with a 1.5 and like 1 million strikeouts? No, that wasn't his game. He was a 2 whatever ERA guy every year for forever.
Mr. Consistent. Not an easy thing to do.
What the heck?
Could just spot his pitches. The guy just he had such guts. I mean, he could be facing Barry Bonds and just throw Barry Bonds his 84 mile per hour changeup and spot it and do his thing. I mean, Franco, he was the definition of, nowadays you got a lot of throwers, right? Franco knew how to pitch.
Yeah, knew how to pitch. So there's a lot of guys that I think that are on this roster or on this ballot that I think belong in. To me, I don't know that Beltran's one of them. I don't know. There's not one in this year's class of new guys that I would say needs to be in the Hall of Fame. There's actually not many coming up either. There's a couple coming up, but not many that I'm like, gotta get in. Like, so it's tough. And some of these guys probably will get in for that exact reason because they're not going to want to have a year with nobody in. That's
terrible for baseball. What about postseason success though? 65 career postseason games, over 1,000 OPS. 16 home runs. I mean, over a
lot of that was 1 year, but still doesn't matter. He was great in the postseason, except for the World Series. He was bad when he was in the World Series.
You're talking with Houston or the one that he won later on?
Doesn't matter.
Both?
He was bad both years.
Huh.
His World Series numbers aren't good. He has a career 600 OPS in the 6-something OPS in the World Series.
Excuse
like
me too, I was mistaken.
1,400.
He actually didn't make it with Houston. He was traded to them in 04, signed with the Mets in 05, which was the year that Houston got swept by the White Sox. So yeah, 2 World Series in his career. With Houston, he was 0 for 3. I mean, that was the end of his career. With St. Louis 2013, he hit 294. Didn't have any homers, but was 5 for 17 in that World Series.
Probably how many? I mean, any doubles? Like probably. I mean,
no, all singles. Knocked in 3 runs though. But yeah.
I mean, look, I'm knocking a guy who was in the postseason and performed. Like, I'm not trying to knock him down. He has a great postseason resume. He had an unbelievable career. A great player. Is he a Hall of Famer though? Like, that's, to me, there's a different level that I think of. I only think of the greatest, and I don't know that he is. At least in my opinion. And again, the character thing to me does knock him down a notch, and because of that, to me, it's definitely a no.
Interesting. Wardy, I mean, Rec and I spent a lot of time on this. Why don't you give your opinion and then you can wrap us up?
Yeah, short and sweet with 2 things. One, I think Beltran is a Hall of Famer, but he's not first ballot. So I think he's going to get in, but I think it's going to take some time. I think that'll be the situation.
Timeout. Why? If he's a Hall of Famer, why would he not make it on the first? This isn't you. This isn't you, Wardy. This is the voting thing. I don't get that. I don't get it.
Gotcha.
If a guy is a Hall of Famer, what is the point in waiting to vote for him?
Yeah.
What changes your mind?
Why did Hank Aaron not get 100%? Why did Ted Williams not? Like, I hate these guys. Well, I can tell you why Hank Aaron didn't get 100%, but why did Ted Williams not get 100%? Like,
it doesn't make any sense. Like, that's just old dudes saying, no, I want to hold on to my precious vote. Like, no, get over it, guy.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer or not, first ballot doesn't matter. That's not a thing. You shouldn't be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You should just be a Hall of Famer.
It like takes away too when you think about it, right? If you have someone that is first ballot and then someone that took years and finally gets in, there's people that are going to probably criticize and be like, "Well, it took you long enough. Like you're a Hall of Famer, but really, are you a Hall of Famer?" Like
the numbers last year, he should get enough support now.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because you have too many voters who are riders who couldn't hit a ball off a tee, who are miserable, and because they have no athletic ability, they're going to say, hey, let me make this guy wait the fucking decade. Let me make this guy wait 10 years to get in because I have that power over him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, in my life, I've never been better than him at anything. But now I've got power trip.
Yeah. See, I hate the lack of consistency with the voting system for everything, not only the Hall of Fame, it feels like. And I will say
Gold Glove, Juan Soto.
Oh, don't
minus 14. Stop. Minus 14. The guy got a Gold Glove because he's a good hitter, and by the way, got a Silver Slugger that he didn't deserve.
He wasn't even a good hitter this year. Like he walked a lot.
And he was Brandon Nimmo this year. Congratulations. What else?
How did he get the Silver Slugger? All right, so I work very closely with a diehard Padres fan, and I had to point out
you guys in. I'm sucking you into ranting.
I had to point out when the Silver Slugger was announced that in 50 less games than Juan Soto, Starling Marte had 1 more RBI. Now, I will acknowledge it was a weak offensive year for National League outfielders. It was very weak. But Starling Marte in 50 less games had 1 more RBI, and he had a higher slugging percentage than Soto, and he had like 2 fewer home runs. How Juan Soto won a Silver Slugger is beyond me.
It's because he's Juan Soto. It's as simple as that. That's the only way to justify.
Ridiculous.
One last thing I want to mention.
Like I said, he deserved the Silver Walker Award, not the Silver Slugger Award.
Yeah. Agreed. And that's true. Brandon Nimmo's winning it every single year. That would be awesome. One thing I will say about the voting system, and this is where it gets hot, and you either are in full agreement with me or you think I'm the worst thing imaginable. I am 1000% a Barry Bonds supporter, and I'm not happy with him not being in the Hall. And that's it, and that's okay.
Rec, he was putting up 40-40 numbers before he started using steroids.
I don't care. I already told you character
we
clause.
Can't.
I
know.
How do you know? How do you know he didn't use anything before that? Because he said so?
His body changed so drastically. Come on.
He started using something different? I don't know. I'm not saying, look, I don't know whether he used it before or not. But my question is, how do you know? You don't. You have evidence that he started using something in 2001, whatever year it was, 96. I don't remember what year it was.
98, I believe.
Whatever.
No, but when we talk about the character,
but seriously, I don't care. This guy cheated everyone around him. Yes, there were other guys in his era doing it, but we know he did. We know others of his era did, and they didn't get in. he doesn't belong to be in. I don't care. Like, to me, it doesn't matter how, if you looked in the mirror and said, I have to do this because I want to be the greatest ever, like, screw you, dude. No, you don't belong in this Hall of Fame. This is for, again, I want to take my kids here and show them, yes, these are the greatest ever to play the game. This is who you should model yourself after. Do I want to say that about Barry Bonds? No. Sorry. Go away. Every time ESPN promotes a tweet with this guy hitting a home run, still to this day, I'm like, what are we doing? What are we trying to, like, my kid is going to go watch that and then be like, oh, I want to be like this guy. No, kid, I don't want you shooting a needle in your butt. Sorry. Go work harder and go keep hitting. Like,
so are you going to show your kid the Ty Cobb plaque and be like, remember, sharpen your spikes before every game?
I told you, I don't condone anything they did back then either, but I can't take them out of the Hall of Fame. Go ahead and take them out. I don't care. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about go work hard. Like, look yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I did it the right way. Like, there were guys I played cards with in professional baseball who cheated when there was no money on the line. What? Like, A, if you cheated when there was money on the line, I wanted to punch you. B, if you cheated when there wasn't any money on the line, I had zero respect for you. What, like, does that make you feel good that you won a card game with no money on the line by cheating? It's the same thing when I think about baseball. And when you say, if any of you say, steroids don't help you hit a slider, I will reach across this computer and beat you, because it does. It does. And I talked to several guys about this, but I'll scream this from the rooftop. When Manny Ramirez told me that, yes, I cheated because it made me more confident. Manny Ramirez needed more confidence. It helps you hit. It helps you do everything in the game. He said he showed up to the field every day and felt great. Yeah, he felt physically great. You never were sore. You were taking tons of hormones. You didn't have to worry about anything. And that makes you feel mentally great. And then you go out without a care in the world, when we all know the game of baseball is 90% mental, and you perform. You perform. And so when you say that Barry Bonds belongs in the Hall of Fame, bullcrap. Everything he did, every single number he did, I don't care how good he was before he did it, because I don't know that that's true. And I don't care if he hit 73 and he would have hit 50 anyway. Like, he cheated the game. He cheated those numbers. His numbers shouldn't even be in any record book, in my opinion.
Okay.
You caught me on the wrong night for this, because I was raging tonight.
No, damn it.
I love
this. This is my issue. The character clause is my biggest issue, because I respect your opinion and all that you're standing for. I do not respect, however, the people who think it's okay for that character clause to come into play, that being the writers, because they're so subjective. There's so many schmucks that do not deserve to be in the hall as is, and it's all from a subjective standpoint. And you want to talk about character, putting yourself on a pedestal because of how you are with the media. Look at Big Papi. Was he truly deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I'm okay with him not being in the Hall of Fame.
Big Papi,
I'm okay with him not being in the Hall.
Well, he is in the Hall. You know that, right?
I know that.
No,
I'm saying I'm okay with him not being in the Hall, because he has been linked to performance in India.
My point, though, is that, like, a major factor into him being in is because of who he is. You can't tell me that isn't
for
true.
Yankees lose. That alone. I mean, come on.
Is
there any better sound in October than Yankees lose?
And I'm not against Big Papi. I'd like to make that clear. I love him as a player, and I feel he deserves a BN too. But my point is I hate the subjectiveness that comes into what we view things as a character with the writers. Not so much you, Rec, but just with the voting system as a whole. That's something that really grinds my gears. I'm not a fan of it.
I understand what you're saying. But to me, that's what's funny. I think the Hall of Fame is subjective, because to me, it's how these guys affected you and the way you watch the game. And did it make it great? Did it make it fun to watch? Were they amazing to watch play?
That's fair.
That's who belongs in the Hall of Fame. But that's why, again, when you talk subjective, that's why character means so much to me. It's like, yes, I want to say I loved watching you play. You played it the right way, and you were one of the top, I don't know, whatever in the game when you played. Like, you were the best when you played. At some point in your career, you were the best at what you did. That's what gets you into the Hall of Fame, not being R.A. Dickey and winning a Cy Young one year because you threw enough knuckleballs that year to get enough innings and guys couldn't hit it and the wind was blowing the right day most of the days you were on the mound. Like, congratulations, that's great. Every guy that played with you didn't like you, literally. Like I did. Actually, I'll actually admit this. I actually liked R.A. I met him in Atlanta. I caught him a little bit in spring training. I thought he was fine. But everyone I played with him, I mean, I could see why they didn't like him because there were some things that would have rubbed on me over a course of 162 for sure. And I never got to do that. But the guys who played with him didn't like him. And that kind of stuff like resonates. Like I don't want to think about someone like that making the Hall of Fame. He's not going to. But like that's the kind of stuff that matters to me. And that's why it is okay to me if it's subjective. But you're right. There should be some consistency. And we all know in this world, you're not going to get that. And that's what's frustrating.
See, now I think the perfect divide here is just the fact that you have a fan point of view and you have a player point of view. I can't explain what it was like being in your shoes and having those experiences. So I respect you being very adamant about feeling the way that you feel. And for me, again, as a fan, I think what's most important with Hall of Fame truly is production. I don't give a shit if you're the biggest schmuck in the world. Curt Schilling, for instance, I think he 100% deserves to be in the Hall, and I don't agree with the voters one bit that he's not in there. I don't care how divisive you are. There are worse people in the Hall, and if they didn't set it up that way from the beginning, I would have a different opinion. I truly do not care. Unless you're a complete murderer or something, where like you should really not be in there. If you're
So
just
OJ shouldn't be in the football hall. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Good, nice slide in there.
The juice is loose.
Yeah, for me, I just don't have that same feeling. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole. But if you were one of the top G's when you were playing, then that should still account for something. You can look at that and say, yeah, he's not a guy we should be a role model for our kids. However, there's no denying who he was as a player. What did he do to make him said player? Putting away the personality aspect. So that is something that sticks out for me. Again, I understand 100% what you're saying, Rex, so I can't deny that. I'm just giving you my point of view for me personally. Like the Schilling shit, it doesn't matter who it is. Like anyone that is voted out for reasons that are either just political or religious or whatever it may be, I think that's outrageous because that's separate from the game, in my opinion. And that's where I'll leave it.
Is anyone not in the Hall of Fame for religious reasons?
I don't know.
That might be I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't got everyone in the Hall or not in the Hall.
The character thing I think is a little stupid. There's a lot of assholes in the Hall of Fame. Nolan Ryan was this grade A certified asshole, and he's one of the best pitchers to ever do it, and he's in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. I think the character thing. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
I know that's controversial.
Yeah, I agree.
Rick, I'm just curious. Without the whole debate, where do you feel? How do you feel about Pete Rose?
The whole Pete Rose thing is interesting to me. There are some people who think that the gambling on the game, the way he did, it did violate a sanctity of the game. That was something that they wanted to stomp out after the Black Sox. And I get it. He's not a good person. So personally, the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame, I could care less. Like, I'm fine with that. His crime against baseball, to me, has been blown up more than it needed to be as far as just the pure gambling. Again, fine that he's not in. I really am. I'm fine with it. I don't hold the gambling against him as much as some, only because I can't prove this. Like, I don't know. Better people than me have researched it and found out. Supposedly he never bet on his, against his own team. Never bet against his own team, right? Like, if you bet for your team, I could care less. Like, good for you. You went out and won. And like, if you were cheating to do it, like, that's a different thing. I don't know how maybe you did something you weren't supposed to do to try to win it whatever it is. Like, to try to win it, to win that money, that's not right. But look, if you're betting on other teams, if you're, like I don't care. Like, I really don't care that much about that. Again, though, he's a piece of shit. Like, I mean, is that really who I want in the Hall? No, because I've told you I'm a character guy. So no, I'm good with that. The whole thing with him and I'm not remembering the name of the commissioner off the top of my head right now for some reason from back then. But the whole thing with him and the commissioner, and really just basically him pissing off the commissioner, and that being the reason that he actually got banned and is never allowed to, or wasn't supposed to ever be allowed to step foot at, in a major league stadium, and yada yada yada. That's garbage. Like, come on, like, let's be adults. Yes, he lied. Yes, he's not a good person, but don't hold crap against people, like, and do that just because you have something against them. I don't agree with that. But look, not a good person. I don't care that he's not in. If he got in, would I raise a huge stink? No. But again, character, I don't give a crap about the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say he's a good dude, but I think you hit the nail on the head. That's always been my argument. He never bet on his team to lose. If he was throwing games, absolutely get him out of there.
Yeah, that's a different discussion.
That's a
only bet on his
whole
team to
different
win.
story.
Yeah,
that's what the Black Sox did. They literally threw a World Series. Like, that's the stuff. Like that's that I completely agree with. If I heard that, saw that, anything like that when I played, like, I wouldn't have hesitated to go up to whoever it was and be like, dude, get out of here. Like, we're not doing that. You're gone. But look, you want your team to win, you bet on them. What do I care? Like, I don't care. Like, but
they always say the most successful people bet on themselves. He just made it literal.
Was he, by the way, how much of that was when he was a manager?
I think it was all as a manager.
Was it as a player manager or just a manager?
That's a good question that I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to.
Fair.
Okay. Because he was a player manager for a little bit too. So there's a lot that I don't. It's, and again, if you're a manager and you're betting on your team to win, like,
you're just putting more pressure on yourself.
What? Like, I don't know.
It's actually kind of badass when you think about it.
Yeah. He's like, my guys are good. I know we're gonna win, and I'm gonna bet on it. Like, good for you, man. Good for you. I don't know. It's not like they made much money back then.
True. Maybe he had some debt to pay off.
Got
involved with the wrong people.
Apparently, he had a gambling problem.
There you go. That's a good place to leave it. Episode 33, right? The Matt Harvey episode.
The Matt,
hour and a half into this thing.
Certainly the Matt Harvey episode.
I know, hour and a half in, and Rec could rant for 2 more.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it though. I love the difference in opinions. That's what makes these conversations so good at the same time. I think it's important. If we're all saying, no, I agree. I agree with everything. The show's going to be over in 10 minutes, and that's not fun. Who likes that? So with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching here on YouTube. If you did, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts at, being in Apple, Spotify, Google. Make sure to hammer it. Make sure to follow us, check us out on social media. Myself at WardyNYM. Anthony Recker at Anthony_Recker, Joe Soralo at the Joe Soralo on Twitter and Instagram if you want to look them up elsewhere. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We'll be back after Thanksgiving, so have a very happy holiday to you all, and we'll catch you guys later. Let's go, Mets.
Instagram, baby. That's if you want the shirtless pictures.
There you go. The shirtless. Also, shout out Harrison, subscriber on the channel. He bought more merch for Bleav in Queens. Appreciate that, guys. Shop.Bleav.com.
Shout out to Dom Hamel, too. Thanks for joining us. That was awesome.
Shout out to you, Dom. Appreciate you. Have a great one, guys.